Today, in current events from a Christian perspective, Kamala is introduced as a, quote, phenomenal servant of God, unquote, for a church service. We'll take a look at this claim and weigh the evidence of whether that's a real thing or not. We'll also take a look at the latest border crisis, gangs taking over apartment buildings in various cities across America. And finally, we take a view into the Al Smith charity dinner, where both sides, Democrat and Republican, were invited, but only one chose to attend. I'll give you one guess who attended and who phoned it in. All this and more today. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public, where we look at current events from a Christian perspective to help you live out your faith. I want to do that well, and I want to do that as briefly as I can, though we want to make sure that we look at these events and understand what's really going on. We'll look at Bible as we go through. We'll listen to a bunch of clips so you hear for yourself. And, of course, you can go and review whatever you want. I just point you to the Bible. Go and read the Bible, know what it says, so that when all of this craziness happens, you can know what's real and what is just this wild culture that we currently live in. If this is helpful to you, hit the like and the share, the subscribe and the buttons and all the things. Send this to a friend if you want. And if you want to support, you can go to churchpublic.com/support. All right, let's get to some news. We're going to start with this clip that I saw. Kamala visited the Koinonia Christian Church or Christian Center Church in North Carolina, and she was introduced by this pastor as a, quote, phenomenal woman of God, end quote. So we're going to look at that. Is she a phenomenal woman of God? What does that even mean? And what are we looking at here? So let's go ahead and start with the clip.
There are things on all sides that we don't all agree with. You know this means, say, man, don't embarrass me in front of company. Okay, so here's the thing. But what I've asked you to do over the years is to listen to the issues, then try to get a sense of the direction that the person would take our country in. Then look at their service history. Pray and ask the Lord, right?
Okay, I'm actually going to pause there. There's a little bit more of this clip, and that's the part that I wanted to get to, but I actually like that. I agree with that. That's good. Look at who the person is, their record, what they've actually done, and pray and ask God to help you go forward. That actually is great advice in terms of election and voting, and you should do that. You should look at the record. At this point, the cool thing about this particular election is you have 4 years of Trump where you see all of the things that he actually did, regardless of what you think, regardless of whether you like his character or don't like his character. You can actually look at what he did through policy and see what happened. And at this point, not only do you have the past almost 4 years of Kamala Harris, you actually have many more years in service before that when she served in California in various roles and all of the things that she did through that. So you have dozens of years of Kamala Harris. She's not new. She's not new to the scene. She's been legislating, or that's probably not the right word. She's been politicking, that's a better word, for many, many years at this point. So look at what she's done in these various roles and make a good decision through prayer and petition to God. I think that's actually fantastic. Now, let's get to the introduction of Kamala Harris.
So I can't even say today how excited I am. I always remind you now, because it's a worship encounter. The name we holler out in church is G. Okay. Oh, y'all must, my God, go ahead and pray, y'all. But I know that there's still a joy down in your spirit that will help me honor this phenomenal servant of God. I believe a tremendous leader. Please stand on your feet and go crazy with me as we welcome the sitting Vice President of the United States of America. Help me celebrate Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon, church. Good afternoon.
Okay. Man, so many things here. I I always start out, listen, I'm going to pause and say to you directly. I always start out and think, this is going to be a shorter episode. I'm just going to say some things. And then I watch these clips again. I've usually watched them 1 or 2 times before. And then I watch them again, and man, I have so many thoughts. So I'm going to do my best. Anyway, okay. So here's where I have to start with this clip. This is Bishop Rosie O'Neill, founder and senior pastor of Koinonia Christian Center Church in Greenville, North Carolina. And I just cannot not say this, that there's your first problem. Women can't be pastors. Oh man, I'm losing people already. You're gonna like throw your phone out the window at this point. This is just the reality of the kingdom of God. You can disagree, but you're not disagreeing with me. You're disagreeing with the scripture and God. Women cannot be pastors. Women can't be husbands. Women can't be fathers. Men can't be mothers. All of these things are in the created order in God's kingdom. This is the created order of God's kingdom. You can argue with it. You can be upset with it. But the reality is this is God's kingdom. If you have a problem with that, you have a problem with God, read 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Corinthians, Ephesians, Genesis, Matthew, etc. It is all very clear in the word of God. But people just don't want to wrap their head around a God who does not like what they like and think the way that they think. Actually, this is the problem that goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, when the serpent says, don't you want to be like God? Did God really say? And we always want that. Of course, that's what we want. We want to do our own thing. We want to go our own way, as the rock singer has said, instead of doing what God has told us to do. So there's your first problem. Women can't be pastors. That's just God's kingdom. So that's the beginning of this, which is wild. Secondly, and I wasn't planning on saying something about this, but I need to make sure we all understand that I don't actually have a problem with Kamala Harris speaking in a church. However, we've been told for years at this point that you're supposed to keep the church and politics separate. This quote unquote separation of church and state or something. Now, I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can go back and listen to my archives or do some homework on your own. The separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It is nowhere found except for a letter to the Danville Baptists making sure that the state, the government, cannot tell the church what to do. It's not that you can't stand up in church and say things, whatever you want. I heard another pastor earlier a week ago or so say the church hasn't gotten more political. It's that, what does it say? The culture has become more spiritual. That's not what's going on here. The world has always been political and theological, because all politics is based in theology, because all politics is based in morality, which is why this funny little thing where you're like, you can't legislate my morality. You can't make laws to tell me what to do. Of course you can. That's exactly what laws are supposed to do. Every single law is moral, because every single law says what you can do or what you can't do, because what you do affects other people, and therefore it is moral, because it's who you're supposed to be when no one is looking or when people are looking. That's integrity. And you're supposed to do the right thing. I was actually just working on that from, I think it's, is it John 8? You're free from the law, but you need to do the things you're supposed to do. Sorry, Romans 8. I've been looking all over the Bible this morning. So anyway, I don't have a problem with Kamala being in this church and saying things. But we've been told by the left that, hey, if you speak politics in church, you're breaking the law or breaking the Constitution or something. I don't think any of that is true. That's a whole nother issue that has gotten us to where we are, because pastors being scared of some boogeyman of saying political things in the pulpit have not given true truth, the full truth about what's going on. And now you have, I read 2 things this last week, that somewhere between 50 and 100 million Christians are not going to vote in this election, because they think, well, it's just God's kingdom. Everybody's going to die anyway, so why would you vote? Why would you get involved? My goodness, that is the absolute worst view possible. You are in this time. You get the ability to vote. Please vote. Exercise that ability. Exercise that responsibility. Okay, now to the content. Kamala is introduced as a, quote, phenomenal servant of God. So let's examine this claim. Phenomenal servant of God. That's a big claim. I feel like that's a big claim. I think that's an important thing to recognize, that she is brought into this church and proposed to be a phenomenal servant of God. I'm just going to examine one claim here, and I could do this on probably multiple, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 off the top of my head. And I'm not going to go down that road because you don't want me to take the time to do that. And I've got other things I want to get to. But let's just take abortion. What about her view of abortion? Remember, Kamala is the one who did a national abortion healthcare tour. She went state to state to state, speaking about the joys and the wonder. Her platform is a platform of joy, remember. She wanted to speak about the joys of abortion as healthcare. And remember, she selected a running mate, Tim Walz, who legislated in his state of Minnesota as the governor that you do not have to save babies who are born alive during botched abortions. That is terrible as it is, but that, therefore, by proxy, makes abortion legal till the moment of birth and beyond in the state of Minnesota. And Kamala has promised to reinstate Roe on multiple occasions, which means codifying abortion with no limits at any time, for any reason, to the moment of birth, potentially even beyond, and that is her platform. And according to this pastor, quote unquote, this is her being a servant of God, a phenomenal servant of God as that. I guess I just have to add, this is clearly not the God of the Bible. Remember, Kamala has also told us regarding abortion this.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
In this quote, in this clip, she's saying, you can have an abortion and still be a great Christian. No, I'm sorry. The answer is just no. Just straight out, flat out, no. That's not a thing. You can't have that thing. That is not how any of this works. God is a God of life. We're even going to look at we're going to look at Hebrews, I think 11 in a little bit, because God is a God of life, not a God of death. Now, God is a God of wrath at certain times because he hates sin. Sure, yes. But killing babies and keeping your faith? No, sorry. That is nowhere in the Bible. Check my work, please. Please do read the Bible. Please read the whole Bible and find the place where it says, yeah, you should just kill your children when you don't want them. Nope, it's not in there. Spoiler, but do the homework anyway. Go and read the whole Bible and see if you can find that in there. So, no, I'm sorry. You can't have that one. You can't have your faith and be a super pro-abortion person. I would say you can't be a Christian following the ways of Christ and support abortion. It is not a thing. You cannot do it. They're not only in conflict, they're in opposition, like 100% opposition. Either you are pursuing the God of life, literally of life and death, of life here on this earth, abundant life, as Jesus calls it, and eternal life, or you pursue the little g God of the world, Satan, who wants death and destruction and lies and darkness. Those are the two paths. There are no other. That's it. Okay, so in this talk at this church, Kamala said a bunch of things. I'm not going to play most of them for you. You can go and look at the whole clip if you want to. This was one of my favorite clips because she's saying something, and to me, this kind of summarizes the whole talk that she had. Let's listen to this.
Because what we see is so hard to see that we lose faith or a vision of those things we cannot see but must know.
Now, I've watched it a couple of times, so I have the benefit of listening to it a couple of times. I want to play it again for you, just in case you missed some of the depth of that. Here we go.
Because what we see is so hard to see that we lose faith or a vision of those things we cannot see but must know.
Yep, not better. That was not better. Second time for you, probably not better. You have to see what you can't see, but then when you do see, then you have to know the thing that you see that you know, but you can't know, but you might know if you see it, but you can't see it. So then when you do see it, you'll know what you don't know or something. Yeah. So that was not a great quote, I would say. I'm just going to leave it at that. Here is me being the most generous that I possibly can be and I, this is the most generous I can be. I don't know if this is real because I literally have absolutely no idea what she was trying to say. Um, but you know, I think she was trying to say Hebrews 1:11. I'm sorry, Hebrews 11:1, excuse me. We all make mistakes, it's fine. I think she was trying to say Hebrews 11:1, faith is being sure of what we hope for, certain of what we don't see. So, biblical faith, in opposition to whatever that just was, is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we don't see. In both of these phrases, you cannot see the thing that you hope for, but you have faith that it is there. I think that's a fairly easy concept. There's something that you hope for. You can't quite see it, but you're sure that it's there. That sounds good. That's faith. That's hope. That's biblical. That's great. And in this context, in Hebrews 11, of course, what we're talking about is salvation, faith in Christ. I mean, that's good stuff. And I should point out that this passage goes on to say a lot about Old Testament faith. It's a great passage. If you haven't read in a while, Hebrews 11, go and read it. It's wonderful because it talks about the journey that God had his people on through faith to get to the New Testament and Christ coming. This passage also talks about God's intent, express, direct purpose for growing families, not killing babies. Don't believe me? Hebrews 11:11. And by faith, Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him, God, faithful, who made the promise. Verse 12. And so from this one man, Abraham, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sands on the seashore. God is the God of life, and in this very passage that she apparently quotes from, sentences or minutes from the time that she says you should have reproductive health care, this passage actually talks about a God who wants so many descendants. He wants families to have babies and fill the earth with people who love and worship him. And the opposite of that, the antecedent of that is, of course, don't kill babies and murder people. I mean, this should be obvious, but this is where we are. So that is one of the detractors in this case where she is a phenomenal servant of God. Let's also not forget the quoting of, well, I'll just let her say, a different book of the Bible.
There's a time for patience, and there's a time for impatience. That's not in Ecclesiastics, but just went off script for a minute, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't even quote a Bible or know the right book in the Bible, I don't feel like phenomenal servant of God can be attributed to you. That's my conclusion on that one. By the way, she's talking about Ecclesiastes, not Ecclesiastics. Is that what she said? Ecclesiastics, whatever word she said. I mean, sure, you can have flubs. But it's kind of an important book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. I mean, Solomon, the wisest man on earth, wrote this mostly to his son to help his son understand the good and the bad of the world. Ecclesiastes, she almost made me say it. This is how wacky it is. Ecclesiastes 3 talks about a time for everything and lots of time. And I talked about this at length before, so I won't extend it here, but no. There's not a time for impatience. I'm going to zoom back to the New Testament, and you have the fruit of the Spirit. One of the fruit of the Spirit is patience. I can tell you with certainty that impatience is not a fruit of the Spirit ever. There is not ever a time for impatience. There's a time for righteous anger, and that's a whole nother thing that you can talk about in John 2, we see Jesus overturning the temple because they're misusing it and making the holy place of God unholy. But righteous impatience is never talked about. So sorry, that's a lose on that one too. So that's where we are. All right, we're going to move on from this. We began talking about what a phenomenal servant of God Kamala is, or potentially is not. Then this clip surfaced at one of Kamala's rallies. So she was at a rally. I'm going to give you the sequence, and then we'll look at this for a moment. And there's another lady who kind of introduces this, who took the video, I believe. So here's what's happening. Kamala is talking about the wonders of abortion and that Roe v. Wade helped women, and then it was terrible that it was overturned, allowing babies to live. So you hear a crowd cheering for more abortions, booing that there's less abortions. Then some random person in the crowd, which is hard to hear. I may rewind it a couple of times. We'll see. Or you can pause it and rewind it. Either way. Some random person in the crowd, while this is going on, talking about Roe v. Wade, says Jesus is Lord. He is, by the way. And Kamala says to that, oh, you're at the wrong rally. A strange thing to say, right? Let's listen.
We remember Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and they did as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Even if you're not listening, hey, by the way, there's a video podcast of this. If you're just listening on audio and you want to see the video, head over to the YouTubes. I'm playing a bunch of clips this time, and sometimes they don't like that I put other clips on, so we'll see what happens, but we'll have it on YouTube. You can navigate there or keep listening on audio. I'll try to remember to explain some of the things we're seeing. There's some video-heavy elements in this, though, so if you want to see the video, navigate over to the video or churchpublic.com, and you can see the video there. Okay. So if you didn't hear, and it was hard to hear, I don't know if I can play it again. Let's see.
We remember Roe v. Wade, and they did really as he intended. Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally.
Yeah, it's really hard to hear. It's in there. Just rewind it a couple of times. You hear as she's saying, Roe v. Wade has been overturned. You hear this person, sounds like a guy, go, Jesus is Lord. And then she's like, you're at the wrong rally. Is that a weird thing to say? I don't know what she meant by this. I don't know what she meant by the see the things you can see and then know you can know or whatever. I don't know what half the things she says means, but I can say she heard somebody say Jesus is Lord, and she said, you're at the wrong rally. You're supposed to be at a different rally. You may just bypass this and go, oh, she's just speaking whatever. I think there's more based on everything that we've seen so far, based on what we've heard. I think there's more, and I think she is intentionally pushing believers away because she knows her policies, basically all of them, are anti-Christian. They are against Christian values and Christian beliefs. She can't even quote the Bible right because she doesn't know it, because she hasn't read it. And some speechwriter of hers who also hasn't read it gives her speeches with quotes from the Bible that are not even in the Bible and not even right. And then when someone actually declares that Jesus is Lord, she's like, oh, no. We can't actually say that because that would be acknowledging that there is a God and then he has a holy scripture and you can read it and know God. We can't do any of that. Go to that other rally. We don't want you here. That's what I'm hearing from it. You draw your own conclusions, but that's what I've got in it. Okay, let's keep going on to some other topics. The border is just still a disaster. It is a disaster. We know it's a disaster, and it's just crazy. So there have been from hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of people who have crossed the border. Kamala also did an interview with Fox News' Brett Baier, and if you didn't watch that interview, I would highly suggest it. It's 20-something minutes. It is an excellent interview. He actually asked her questions, which to date, I can't recall anyone actually asking her questions that matter at all. They just deal with her with really, kid gloves and just let her do whatever she wants to do and say whatever she wants to say. And he did not do that. And he pushed back on her many times. I won't play much of it, but I do like this clip where he asks her about the border policies and specifically about the fact that she has been in office for 3.5, almost 4 years at this point, and done almost nothing about it until very recently. Let's listen to this.
Frankly, exhausted of Brett.
More than
People are
70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But you're
people
the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me.
Oh, it's so wild. So, again, a couple things. She has been the sitting vice president, and though she debates it at this point, borders are, for most of that time, in hundreds of thousands to millions and millions of illegal crossings have occurred during that time. So, when she says that, hey, there are problems with the border, the question every single time should be, well, why didn't you do anything about it then? And why don't you do anything about it now? Because even though this is the wild time that we're in and everybody is pushing to become the next president, she's actually still the vice president today. There still is a president of the United States somewhere today, and they're doing nothing today. So she's asked how many illegal crossings, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million. She can't say. She won't say. It would absolutely, here's the thing. Here's the trick. By saying how many have come across, it would absolutely ruin the illusion that she is good at this. And that's really the kicker. That's really the bottom line. It's that she is pretending that either she's good at this, or Biden was bad at this, or she's going to do new hope and change. She's going to turn the page. She said she's going forward, not backward, but she is it now and hasn't done anything. Now, that weird fake pastor at the beginning said, hey, you should see what people have done and make your choices accordingly. I actually agree with that. These are the things that she has done, or in fact not done, and you need to make your decision accordingly. And at this point, we have documentation all over social media about the problems with the border. Now we have documentation about gangs taking over entire apartment buildings, first in Colorado. I'm not going to play you this video, but this is a video, if you haven't seen it, it's been around for a few weeks now, of a Venezuelan gang taking over a whole apartment building in Colorado. And I just saw, I think yesterday, that now we've also discovered they're doing it in San Antonio, Texas. This is the Daily Mail, says evil super gang seizes 4 apartment complexes in major Texas city in San Antonio. This seems to be a problem. It's like Venezuelan gangs taking over entire apartment buildings in America is a problem. So back to the election, J.D. Vance goes on a news show, and the lady has been talking about how bad Trump is, all the bad things that Trump is doing or has done or whatever. And then this topic comes up, the gangs taking over apartment buildings. Take a listen to how this interaction goes.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
I mean, well said, JD. Well said. Yeah, but so I would love. That was an excellent rebuttal. I mean, it's crazy. I try not to use crazy all the time. I probably use it too much, but it is crazy that the media, who is just in the bag for the Democratic Party at this point, everyone knows it. It's obvious. You have millions of illegal immigrants coming over, as he said, not being vetted. I read a report the other day, showed you that hundreds of thousands of them are actual convicted criminals. There was something like tens of thousands of actual murderers and rapists and things that are convicted, that are just loose in America at this point. Now, she says, well, only a handful of apartment buildings, of whole apartment buildings have been taken over. Here's a question that did not get answered or asked in this exchange. How many is too many, news host? So is 2 apartment complexes too many apartment complexes for Venezuelan gangs to take over in America? 5, a dozen? If they get to a dozen apartment complexes, is that too many? Where's the line here? In America. We're not in a third world country. We're in America, where South American gangs are taking over entire apartment complexes, and apparently a handful is okay. A handful is okay. I mean, if it were 5, if it were 10, that would be a big problem. But a handful, I mean, like, who really cares about apartment complexes anyway? It's not like people live in them and have to work around them and have kids and families that are in them or next to them. Oh wait, there are. Like, where's the line here? The line should be, in America, no South American gangs taking over entire apartment complexes. It should just be none. Like, that's not a hard line. Let's not have South American gangs taking over entire apartment complexes. Yeah? No? Nothing? And I'm laughing, but it's terrible. It's like either laugh or cry at this point. Like, this is just a hot disaster. So then the Democratic Party brings out Bill Clinton. We haven't heard from Bill Clinton in a long time, probably for good reason. But for some reason, he is also stumping for Harris Waltz, and he comes out and also talks about this border problem. This is a wild speech. You gotta hear this one.
Case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. Okay. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. Right. There wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
I'm rarely speechless, people, but that I don't get it. Like, I think they're trying. Really hard. Like, we showed you the men for Kamala the other day. If you missed the Men for Kamala, please go back in the archives and watch the video for Men for Kamala, because that one did not land. And no one in that video is an actual man or a straight man. But anyway, I don't know why they let him talk. I don't know why they let anybody talk at this point. They should not let anyone talk, because the messages that they're giving are not helping them. So Clinton, I don't know if he gets confused. I cannot tell what's going on here. But he talks about the border needing reform. Yes. And that we don't have enough children being born in America for replacement. Yes, we've talked about that on the show many times. We're below replacement capacity because people are not getting married. They're not having children. Yes. And Clinton talks about the fact that they need illegal immigrants to work for little to no money. What? That's both taking advantage of them and terrible And he's just like, yeah, we need these people here because, like, I'm not going to do the job. Like, I'm not going to work in the factory. I'm not going to pick the fruit out of the field and harvest things. Like, obviously somebody from another country is going to have to come and do that. This is what he is saying that the Democrats want. That's not all. And he says these poor Americans, as you see in the picture here, one of them, and there have been many, I'll turn it off now, have been murdered by people who have come into this country illegally, and that wouldn't have happened if this border were closed to criminals. Wow, is all I have to say about that. He said all the things that we have been saying are problems with an open border, and I don't know what his point is, because I agree with all of those points. We need a border reform, and we need more children in America and better families and more robust families that have faith and are having children. And we should not be taking advantage of illegal immigrants to work for little to no money. And people should not be murdered and otherwise by criminals that are led into the country illegally. All of those things. Let's do all of those things. What? I just don't know anymore, people. I don't know where we are. So let's try to land this plane. Back to Kamala's non-answer. She answers Brett Baier about the about the border. He's like, hey, how many millions have come across? And her answer is, well, Trump has been running for president. And I love that Brett Baier, who I may not agree with everything, but he's a journalist, and he's like, so the question was, how many people have come into the across the border illegally? You are the current vice president with the current border president who, and both of you did all these executive actions to open the border. And your answer is, well, Trump is running for president. I'm sorry. That's not how any of this works. You don't get to make border policy when you're running for president. And everyone knows that. And this is where we come back to the truth. And I talk about the truth a lot, probably more than you'd like me to, but it is so important. And this is where I'll land this plane. You cannot suppress the truth forever. You may want to. I have a couple of history books on the bottom shelf. You can't see them from here, about Russian history, because it's fascinating and terrifying, because a lot of what happened in communist Russia was they made up lies. They forced you to believe the lies, and those that didn't believe the lies were hauled off to the gulag, most never to be seen again, and tens to hundreds of millions of people were killed because of these lies. This is the reality. It is a brutal reality of communism, way worse than any war that has happened before or since. And you cannot suppress the truth forever, because eventually that truth came to light. You can do it for a while, and you can do it with force, and you can make that, but reality is reality. And it just seems to me the reality is breaking through a little bit in this. Truth is true. And to go back to the Bible, the truth will set you free. John 8:32. All right. Moving on from the border, because good grief, we have to. We're going to go to New York, because this section, man, this is fun. And I'm just going to keep going. You can change the channel or pause it and take a break, get a snack, and come back if you'd like. I'll be here. Okay, so we're going to New York. This charity dinner took place. All the parties, Democrat, Republican, were invited to. Happens every election time. The Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner, commonly known as the Al Smith dinner. It's a white tie dinner. It happens in New York City, raising funds mostly for Catholic charities, supporting children, et cetera, et cetera. It's at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and it's hosted by the Archbishop of New York. So, Al Smith, he was a guy, grew up in poverty, became the governor of New York, I believe, 4 times, and first major Catholic nominated as president in 1928. Fine, whatever. So this dinner happens. I told you at the beginning, you get to guess that both presidential candidates were invited. One of them attended. One of them phoned it in. And I asked you to guess who. Well, here you go. Trump was there. Kamala was invited. She chose not to attend. She phoned it in. She made a video message. We're going to look at this video message, because that in itself, I think, is going to be worth the price of admission if you've made it this far. So hang on, because we're going to look at her video message. But before we get to that, there's more highlights. Kamala was the first presidential nominee since 1984 to skip this charity dinner. That's kind of a big deal. And she's trying to win over as many votes as she can, presumably. So, comedian Jim Gaffigan, some of you may have heard of him. Pretty funny, though not a fan. He's definitely not a conservative. I might say he leans fairly left. You can go back and listen to some of his things over the past 3 or 4 years, which were very left-leaning. However, and I believe he's even said things against Trump in the past. But still, he had this to say at the Al Smith dinner about Kamala. Let's listen to this.
You know, this event has been referred to as the Catholic Met Gala. 22% of Americans identify as Catholic. Catholics will be a key demographic in every battleground state. I'm sorry, why is Vice President Harris not here?
Yikes.
I mean, consider this. This is a room full of Catholics and Jews in New York City. This is a layup for the Democratic nominee. I mean, in her defense, I mean, she did find time to appear on The View, Howard Stern, Colbert, and the longtime staple of campaigning, the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Oh, wow. Shots fired. That's all I got to say on that. I mean, that was rough. That was rough. Okay, so that was pretty rough. That's how he began. There's so many. I think this event is worth watching. I know you're probably not as political as I am, so you probably don't care. But there was a ton of just fiery things happening in this event, and I was here for it. I was eating the popcorn, checking it out. So I'll play a couple more. Gaffigan goes on, and he makes a comment about the whole Democratic machine and what happened after that first presidential debate. You probably recall Trump versus Biden before everything changed, and everyone in the country finally got a look at Biden's actual mental state and what's really going on. And then everything changed because the Democratic machine changed all the rules. So Gaffigan makes this comment about it.
The Democrats have been telling us Trump's reelection is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed Kamala Harris. In other words, all her dreams have come true. Really? It really makes you consider the power of prayer, right, Cardinal? Sometimes prayers take 3.5 years and a George Clooney op-ed.
Dang. If you don't get the George Clooney joke, that's fine. George had Biden at some event right before that debate and then had said that Biden is not the same as he used to be. Anywho, that was brutal. And yet, accurate. It's pretty much exactly what happened. Which is why comedy is funny. Because comedy, when it is funny and great, touches on a true thing and pokes at it a little bit and makes you go, oh, that's what's happening here. And a great comedian can find that true thing and find the weird illusion that surrounds it and cut through that illusion and go, hey, yeah, but what about this? And there's a great example. Everyone's saying, oh, yeah, Kamala just earned this nomination. No, she did not earn the nomination. In fact, she didn't campaign for the nomination at all. In fact, even when she was campaigning for president, she received no votes in 2020 for president at all. So what he said is functionally true. Now, Trump was also there. I don't have time to play all of the Trump things. Again, if you want to laugh and you like this kind of humor, I would recommend it. I think Trump gives a masterclass in comedy. Like, some of them are a little rough because they are, but it's funny. And it's 20-something minutes of Trump being funny. And he starts with a joke about himself. I'm going to play that joke and maybe one or two more, and then we'll land like, why is this important? I know you're sitting there going like, this is a fun ride, but what are we talking about? I will show you. There is a point to this from a Christian perspective on what we're doing, and we're going to get there, but I think this is a fun ride to get there, so hopefully keep going with me. Here's Trump's first joke.
Tradition holds that I'm supposed to tell a few self-deprecating jokes this evening, so here it goes. Nope, I've got nothing. I've got nothing.
I mean, that's
There's
funny.
Nothing to say. I guess I just don't see the point of taking shots at myself when other people have been shooting at me for a hell of a long time and they shoot hard.
I mean, listen, that's funny. It's right in that line of like self-deprecating, but knowing who you are, and also like kind of poking fun at the fact that he was almost assassinated by being shot a few weeks ago. Does anybody remember that happened? I mean, that happened. We still don't know all the details behind it because that's the world that we're currently in. But he was almost assassinated by getting shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he has enough self-identity and humility to make fun of himself getting shot at in front of all these people. Like, that is great comedy. It's just enough self-deprecation to say, like, yeah, I'm not perfect, and I'm also getting shot at all the time. But it's a joke about like, all right, let me figure out, what self-deprecating things I'm supposed to say. Like, let me make fun of myself. Let me think of something. Oh, nothing. Like, that's funny. Okay. He tells a bunch of other jokes. I'm going to tell this joke. I'm not going to tell this joke. I'm going to let Trump tell this next joke, and then I'm going to explain it because I want to make sure this joke is very clear. And this is my favorite joke because it illustrates, I think, very clearly where the Republican and Democrat parties are and why this election is important. And I know you're not going to think that hearing the joke, but it does, and that's the beauty of a joke. It cuts to it so fast. Listen.
Coming and very, very strong a certain way. I won't tell you what way that is, but Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
Okay. And you're like, oh, that was a low blow. That wasn't funny. Listen, that was hilarious. And it's funny. And it's not because he's calling Schumer trans or whatever. That's not the joke. I mean, that's part of the joke, but that's just the first layer of the joke. He talks about how woke the Democrats have become. The joke is on the Democratic Party, who cannot define a woman and yet truly believes that a man can become one. That is the joke. The joke is the Democrat Party has been trying to convince you that it has no idea what a woman is, and no one can define what a woman is, but also, if you're a man and you want to become a woman, you just say it and you magically are. That's the joke. The joke is they've been trying to give you an illusion of reality, and Trump, with one quick joke and bringing some other people into it, like Representative Schumer, he throws this joke in and he's pointing out the reality that there is a definition of woman that's very clear and easy, and a man cannot become one. That's the joke. The joke is the Democratic Party is out to lunch and have been for a long time, and all you have to say is, hey, buddy, don't worry about it. If this one chick doesn't work out, you could be the first woman president too. Man. So, of course, Trump has the best jokes because he knows how to make fun of himself. He's a balance of confidence and self-deprecation, and that is funny. That's what makes funny. Comedians know this. Funny people know this. People who like to laugh know this. The left cannot laugh at jokes at all because they cannot laugh at themselves. That is the problem. They think they're so serious. They take themselves so seriously. They think they're literally saving the world, and there's no time to be funny about this. We're saving the world, or the world is at stake. You can't laugh at this. And they're lying about the reality of the situation. So you can't make a joke about the lie. Otherwise, it will break the lie. It'll break the imaginary world they've created where the right can joke all day long because all they have to point out is the silly little lies that the left is telling, and their house of cards just falls to pieces. This is the reality of it, and we need to be able to point a little bit of fun and say, you don't think you can't define a woman? Like, how can you not define a woman? Like, everybody, every man, woman, and child can define a woman. It's really easy. Also, men cannot become women. It's really easy. And yet, they have to tell all of this circus full of lies to try to get you to believe, well, no, there's definitely circumstances where a man can become a woman. And we can't define what a woman is because, I mean, how could you define what a woman is? Because it's just, there's so much nuance and there's so much, like, it's just how you feel and it's in the feelings. And a woman is someone who thinks they're a woman. No, all that's ridiculous. Just say the thing. Like, that's all. It's so easy. But they can't, because if they do, then their whole house of cards falls apart. It's hilarious. All right. Unfortunately, speaking of not funny, now we get to that part where Kamala, who did not attend this on purpose, quite literally phoned it into the event. We're going to watch a little bit of this video. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get through, but and for some context, if you are not as old as me, I guess, there were some Saturday Night Live skits where, what's her name? Molly Shannon. Molly Shannon, as a character, Molly Shannon, the actress, on Saturday Night Live played this character, a Catholic character, Mary Catherine Gallagher. It was funny, 2 decades ago, but this is what in this. I don't know how to set this up. This event that all these people were at, all these politicians, was to honor Catholic charities and kids in Catholic charities. Kids that need things, need food and housing, etc. And families. That's what the event is about. So Kamala's choice was to not go and to make this video with former SNL actress in character of Mary Catherine Gallagher. Here you go.
Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship.
Cool. Oh, sorry.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Gallagher. Mary Catherine Gallagher. It's so nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mary Catherine. Right now I'm trying to record my speech for tonight's dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know. I just want to say that I'm Catholic, and tonight is one of the biggest dinners next to the Last Supper.
It is a very important dinner, and it's an important tradition that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that. But that's gross.
So tell me something. I'm giving a speech. Do you have some thoughts about what I might say tonight?
My feelings about what you should say tonight would be best expressed in a monologue from one of my favorite made-for-TV series.
Okay, let's hear it.
Don't you see, man? We need a woman to represent us. A woman brings more heart, more compassion. And think how smart she must be to become a top contender in a field dominated by men. It's time for a woman, bro. And with this woman, we can fly.
What series was that from?
Oh, that's from House of Dragons, now streaming on HBO Max.
Is there anything that you think that maybe I shouldn't bring up tonight?
Well, don't lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness to thy neighbor.
Indeed, especially thy neighbor's election results.
Just so you know, there will be a fact checker there tonight.
Oh, that's great. Who?
Jesus. And maybe don't say anything negative about Catholics.
I would never do that, no matter where I was. That would be like criticizing Detroit in Detroit.
I can't take any more of this. There's more. I don't even know how much more, like a minute or two more. It's honestly not worth watching. Here, I mean, maybe you thought that was funny. I try to watch these things, and I try to just, like, start at zero and, like, say, like, okay, this is gonna be funny this time. And after watching jokes that are legitimately funny, I watch it and go, that wasn't funny. Like, it just wasn't funny. None of those jokes were funny. She made fun of Trump and the right and January 6th and the Republican Party, and kind of did make fun of Catholics because she was choosing Mary Catherine Gallagher as the representative of what Catholics are, who apparently stick their hands in their armpits and smell them. none of that was funny. And she could have been self-deprecating and made a joke about anything, like her laugh, which she's got to know is terrible, right? Doesn't she? Does she? Has no one said it? Does she not have any self-awareness that her laugh is ridiculous? Like, no? Or the rambling word salad that she does sometimes. Like, everybody says weird things. I do it too. It would be funny to make fun of yourself doing that. Like, nothing? Nothing. There's no making fun of yourself. It's only, I'm going to make fun of you and actually scold you at the same time. And don't lie about it, because there will be a fact checker there. And if you lie, we'll catch you in it. Like, there's no funny. There's no fun in it. There's no jokes. None of that was a joke. Like, it was just school marming you to behave. So it's not funny. It's not endearing. It's just condescending. That's my read on the whole thing. Listen, put a message in if you think I'm wrong, but like, it wasn't funny. And she didn't show up in person, which would have been the respectable and honorable thing to do. But rather, she made a silly video that was just more silly than anything else. It wasn't useful. It wasn't funny. And again, this is because the left cannot joke. They can't joke, and they can't be funny, because it would ruin the real joke. The lie that you're trying to make you believe, they're trying to make you believe this lie, that the emperor has no clothes. I mean, you all remember that story. The emperor has no clothes, and everybody sees him and goes like, what is this guy doing with no clothes on? But everybody has to lie about it because the emperor would kill you or whatever. I mean, it's a long story. So everybody lies to the emperor, but everybody knows the emperor really has no clothes. And this one kid at the end goes, Dad, that guy's naked. And they're like, shh, you can't say it. Like, that would ruin the joke. It would ruin the lie. It would ruin the lie that the emperor really has no clothes, but everybody knows it. Okay. Don't get too down. Don't get too depressed. God is doing something good in this place. And man, we've got to talk about it. I keep coming back to Romans 8:28. We know in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his good purpose. So we're going to look at another pastor that I came across talking about Christian voting responsibility. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of pastors. I saw another one that I was going to clip and show you, and I may still, who said basically don't vote, because by voting, you're like not living in the kingdom of God, and instead you're living in the kingdom of man and not follow. I mean, it was a disastrous view. Like, I'm not telling you have to vote. You need to use your conscience. There is no biblical mandate to vote. However, there is a biblical mandate to do what you need to do to live your life. And you have a great opportunity to vote. So I hope you do vote. I obviously have very strong opinions on who you should vote for, and I'm allowed to share those opinions. I'm not shy about that or beating around the bush on that. So I'll tell you straight out. There's two parties here, and one of them will lead to more flourishing, and one of them will diminish your quality of life. Like, that's pretty obvious. But some pastors are beginning to say, as a pastoral responsibility to lead the people by showing them you have responsibility. Let's go to Ephesians 2:10 again. You were created in advance as God's workmanship with work to do. Go read Ephesians 2:10. Go read Ephesians 2 in its entirety. It's really good. So you have things to do. To sit around and do nothing is not good. It's not good for you. You're not supposed to sit around and do nothing. So this is Josh Howerton, and he has this to say about the whole political voting situation. Listen.
So I'm going to say something that has a bit of an edge to it, but I need you to understand this biblically. When Christians do not vote, what they're doing is they're abdicating their leadership position in the constitutional republic that God has placed you in, and it's a form of passive rebellion against God. In the exact same way that it would be wrong for a husband to refuse to lead his family, and it would be wrong for a pastor to refuse to lead his church, it would be wrong for you to refuse to take part in the leadership of the nation that God has put you in. Does this make sense? Yeah, this makes sense. So if we go back to ask the original question, would Jesus vote? Yes. Yes, he would, because he wouldn't abdicate the responsibility that God has given him. Now,
so just to remind you, we're in a constitutional republic, and you, or we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, like, we the people are the government. I know it doesn't seem like that, and things are shifting, so that's another whole political topic. But the reality is, by design, you are supposed to be the one who votes and leads the nation by giving your vote. So by holding your vote in, you are not leading the nation. That's his point, and it's a correct point. Now, of course, we're in the kingdom of God. Of course, no power on earth, above the earth, under the earth can stop the kingdom of God and his church. All of that is eminently true. At the same time, you are currently in the world right now. You are alive. You do have work to do. Ephesians 2:10. We just looked at that. And you need to love God, love others, and share the gospel of Jesus. So here's the question that it comes down to: practicality. We can talk about all this theological stuff. We can talk about all this philosophical and political ideology. But what are you going to do if you are silenced because the president of the United States says, go home, we don't want to hear Jesus is Lord, as Kamala did earlier in this video? What is your response to that? What are you going to do? Or on the other hand, if you don't like all of the policies, you don't like the character, but by voting for a different person, you will still have the freedom to worship, what is your response? One way or another, please, just get out there and vote. Voting matters because people matter. Many nations in history, many nations, most nations, if I'm thinking through history, have not given the people the opportunity to vote on its leadership and policy and practice. Most have not. We are in a wonderful environment where it still matters what you say through your vote. We are, in fact, hurtling, going really fast towards a possible America where you will not be able to vote or your vote won't matter at all. I hope we don't get there, but that's the direction we're going. You have a chance now. You have a great opportunity and responsibility now. I hope that you don't waste it. Get out and vote. We're very close now. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, I hope that you will keep the faith. Thanks again for joining today. I really hope this was helpful to you. If it was, like, subscribe, review, share, support, hit a notification, hit the 5 stars, send it to a friend. Do all of the things you need to do to help your friends and family members and anyone you know learn what the candidates are like, how to vote, and what to do. God bless, and we'll see you next time.